All right, I think we can slowly start. Gonna share my screen. Is my screen? Okay, perfect. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the fourth panel. Before I'm handing everything over to Tom, our moderator for today, I'm just going to introduce you to the housekeeping rules really quick. You will be muted through the panel discussion or through the panel. You can unmute yourself later at the Q&A. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to use the chat and send it to everyone. If you want to change your view, there is on the right-hand side, you can put it in gallery view or speaker view. If you have any questions, just send me a text and I'm happy to help. And with that, I would hand it over to Tom. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you, Franziska. I really appreciate it. So let me introduce myself real quick, and then I'd like to introduce the panelists. So I'm Tom Kelly. I'm the Executive Director and CEO of a group called Automation Alley. We are based just north of Detroit in Troy, Michigan, but think of us as Michigan's Industry 4.0 Knowledge Center. We cover the entire state and we try and be that resource if you're talking about collaborative robots or 3D printing or AI or modeling, simulation, visualization, VR, AR, all of these technologies. We're trying to create a pool of knowledge where manufacturers can learn from that. We're also a World Economic Forum Advanced Manufacturing Hub, one of only two in the US. There's one in Massachusetts partnered with MIT, and we're the second. And that gives us a lot of access to global knowledge. So I encourage everyone to check us out because we don't stop at the border. We want to be a knowledge center for everybody, and you're all welcome to swim in our ecosystem. In fact, I think we're stronger together. I think when I define the world, I see the Midwest as one region, which is we need to sort of recapture our swagger on the global stage. That this is where automation and advanced manufacturing does indeed happen. So I can actually accept Milwaukee, Michael, as part of that mission. So we were talking before we started. So with that, I'll turn it back to Franziska. She can take us to the next slide and with the panelists. So this panel is called the New Business Models Within IIoT. IIoT is, for everyone, is the Industrial Internet of Things. Not to be confused with the Internet of Things, which is a different animal, more consumer-based. This is about how you get sensors talking to sensors and using different methods in AI to really get to a place where you understand exactly what's happening at the macro level and the micro level within a factory. And so with that, we're going to introduce 5 panelists. I'll introduce them one at a time. And first, I'd like to introduce Michael Cook. He is the Director of Global Academic Partnerships with Rockwell Automation. And Michael, I think it's best if I let you introduce yourself, and I'll give you a minute or two to give us your background, and then we'll move from there, okay?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Tom. So Michael Cook with Rockwell Automation, based out of Milwaukee, which is our global headquarters here in the Midwest, and also responsible for working with universities, technical colleges, and really schools to build that pipeline of industrial IoT talent that our end users need, as well as our company. So very familiar with working with applied solutions, research institutes, and actually implementing technologies with the perspective of developing the necessary talent that's going to unlock the value of working with it. So thanks for having me here today. I appreciate it and looking forward to the discussion.
Thanks, Michael. Next, I'd like to introduce Gizbert Ledvan. He is the Director of Business Development Machine Tools for Heidenhain Corporation. Gizbert, why don't you introduce yourself, please?
Hello, everybody. My name is Gizbert Ledvan. I'm here at Heidenhain in Schaumburg, which is close to the Chicagoland, so in the Midwest. Heidenhain is a corporation based out of Germany. We foundation, and we heavily involved in motion technology, monitoring machine tools, optimizing machine tools, and automation systems. And my role here is to engage with the end users, understand their needs, how they want to be more efficient, how they want to apply new 5-axis machining technology and CNC technology, and how do they monitoring their processes. And we're trying to help them to understand that a little bit better. And that's my role here, to build a team to be closer to the end user who is using Heidenhain components and their equipment. And I'm glad to be on this team today, and hopefully I learned something too. Thank you.
Thank you, Gizbert. Appreciate it. Next, I'd like to introduce Lou Leisuzi. He is the Vice President of America Sales and Global Advisory for Relayer Inc. And Lou, you want to say an introduction for us? Are you muted?
Yeah, no, I'm good. I'm good.
Oh, there you go. Got you, Lou.
Thanks, Tom. Appreciate it. Appreciate being a part of this this panel today, and all these people that are on here. It's some great opportunity to just talk and see how everybody's attacking this space called IIoT. I've been around the IoT business since the early days. I've been part of the supply chain and what I call the technical chain, connecting technologies and being part of a lot of digital transformation programs that finally brought me into Relayer, where Relayer is a company that basically helps CEOs transform their business and to look at it a little bit differently than just a technology play, but also a business outcome play. And when you're owned by the largest risk management insurance company in the world, Munich Re, you have a lot of other different abilities to bring to our clients. So excited to be on this panel, excited to hear a lot of the questions that people are talking about, and thank you for the opportunity.
Great, thank you, Lou. And next, I'd like to introduce Dr. Diane Tammy Stinton. She's the CEO of Tmco Inc. And Diane, could you introduce yourself, please?
Absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Diane Tammy Stinton, and Tmco stands for Total Manufacturing. We're a small second-generation family-owned contract metal manufacturing company. We're located in Lincoln, Nebraska, so I can't claim that we're the most advanced manufacturing center in the Midwest. I don't think we even count as the Midwest. I think I've gotten into arguments we're actually Heartland or something like that. But maybe we can claim that we're really technology forward in the Heartland. But we were recruited to be on this panel by the Nebraska Chamber of Commerce, and we were giving a tour, and they were just kind of blown away by the level of investment that we have made in technology. And I'm especially interested in how this plays out in terms of business for us as an end user, and then also how it affects training and workforce.
Thank you, Diane. And last but not least, Mark, you've been very patient. I'd like to introduce Mark Wheeler. He's the Director of Supply Chain Solutions for Zebra Technologies Corporation. And Mark, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your company?
Great, thank you. So I'm with Zebra. I'm responsible for our strategy in manufacturing operations and in warehouse operations. That's where I've spent my entire career, starting with IBM in an ad tech automation group. Zebra, as you may know, is the leading provider of mobile computing, print, scan, real-time location solutions, and end-to-end throughout the enterprise. So we generally are connecting execution systems to the physical world, either through humans or direct connect to things. We're doing more and more on that. I was suggested to mention German connections. Both my parents are 50% German, and I grew up getting yelled at in German quite a bit. I do remember that. But very happy to be here. Looking forward to the conversation.
Great, thank you, Mark. Mark, stay with me because I think I'd like to start with you, and I'm going to ask all of the panelists this same opening question. So if we think about IIoT, it's creating these smart factories around the globe. It's creating new values for manufacturers. It's creating new business models. It's destroying other business models. So with that context, that there's all this change going on, how are either your companies, in Diane's case, or perhaps your customers in Mark's case and Lou's case, you know, how has this industrial Internet of Things helped transform manufacturing? Like, what's happening out there? Give our audience a sense of what they should be paying attention to, and then we'll deep dive from there. But let's start with Mark, and then I'll go to each of you with that question, okay?
Sure. I have the privilege really of working with a lot of our customers fairly closely, and walking into a manufacturing enterprise, there's usually, you know, the key focus is going to be asset utilization, productivity, quality, safety, and any one of those, you know, metrics can drive, significant interest and activity. And in general, almost any problem like that can be helped with our solutions to one degree or another, because we're all about connecting and providing better visibility. And I find that most manufacturers, most discrete manufacturers in particular, are very, very dialed in on, we know that if we get better visibility to the physical world in real time, that we're going to operate better. And it's all a matter of figuring out, okay, exactly how do we do that? How do we choose the right technology and get to the right ROI? But there is a sense that, yes, the opportunity is there. The technology is rapidly maturing. It's going to make, create the opportunities for us to operate more effectively by directly connecting to the physical world through a variety of sensors. And there's, a proliferating group of sensors that are increasing capability and getting lower in cost that can be, leveraged to do exactly that.
Great. So Diane, I'm going to come to you next. Because you're the end user of the group, the customer of the group. And I'd love to get your take on, well, what are you seeing? You've spent the money out of all of us here. So what are you seeing, and what are you pleased with, and what are you disappointed by?
Sure. I think in our journey with IIoT and just seeing technology change over time, integration of ERP system and having everything connect into that, we're just seeing new possibilities for collection of data, the types of data that we're able to collect, being able to make decisions quicker, possibly with different metrics. We're also really looking to look holistically about it. I mean, we can talk about efficiencies and downtimes and all those good things, but also you have to look at workforce as well, that companies are facing extreme workforce shortages, national skilled labor shortages, and this isn't anything new. Currently, unemployment is a hot topic. And so looking at automation, robotics really makes sense for the industry as a way to combat that also into the future. And the other thing it does also is to help us really shape a different perception of manufacturing from this kind of Rust Belt, your grandpa's garage, very labor intensive, to something that's very high tech, high wage, and very attractive.
Thanks, Diane. So, Michael, I'm going to come to you next, and Gizbert, hang on, because I'll come to you right after that. But so, Michael, Rockwell is the gorilla in this space, for gosh sakes, right? So, tell me your perspective of what's happening out there. And if anybody's got a crystal ball, it might just be you and Gizbert in terms of understanding where the world is going. What do you say?
Yeah. We've got a strongly installed customer base, certainly here in the US, and we're also a global manufacturer as well. So we run our own manufacturing operations. So we're seeing it on two sides of the story. The one is implementing our own technologies and doing these end-to-end connected systems, which are, like Mark had mentioned earlier, they provide significant more exposure and insight in terms of data that's available to start making intelligent decisions. At the same time, they also surface the question of risk, the risk of taking action in terms of actually automating and upskilling and finding that talent that Diane was referring to. And then on the other side, our end users, they're really trying to go through, once they have this awareness that they need to start looking at increased automation, they're really trying to drill down, understand what that means, and then tying that to our ROI. And I think it's really that transformational journey that we have to work more closely with our end users to kind of guide them through that. Because at the same time that they are automating, they're upskilling, the existing talent as well. And then the other thing is they also trying to look not just to be more competitive, but also to have tangible, well-informed economic outcomes with their implementation. So it's a little bit of both. And I think through some of our own journey implementing our own kind of connected enterprise vision around OT, IT integration, we've been able to bring some hard lessons learned and actually share those with our customer base and our system integrators. But then also, as we look to the future, we're very cognizant of applying things like artificial intelligence in our own operations, and really trying to understand where the true value lies in implementing these technologies, as well as trying to provide input into these standards bodies as Industry 4.0 becomes this kind of emerging space of, we need interoperability standards, for example. We need standards around cybersecurity. And the part that's typically missing in that discussion was just what Diane pointed out, is standards around an Industry 4.0 workforce that standards in that arena. So that's kind of how we see it. But it's a very interesting space, and I think that employers and certainly end users are starting to acknowledge that you can't think in the old paradigm of you've got 10 to 15 years to transform. You really got to get on this now, and see this as a shift in your business model and your company culture as to how you do business, and then treat it with continuous product lifecycle management wrapped around it.
Great, thank you. And hold that thought, because we will come back to the challenges in the next question. So I'm going to go to Gizbert. Lou, I'm saving the best and smartest for last, so don't worry. Gizbert.
All right.
So help me understand. So we've heard from Mark and Diane and Michael. Are you agreeing with everything that's being said? Do you have a little different take on it? What are you seeing out there in terms of IIoT today?
I think we a little bit in the same boat as Rockwell Automation is a little bit. Rockwell Automation is because Heidenheim produces its own parts, and we have to streamline our production. Specifically in Germany, it's fairly expensive, as you know, to produce because of the labor rates. So we have to look for automation, and we learn a lot within our own production because we're also supplying components to the automation world, like Rockwell Automation, for example. But I think what is more important, and we talked about that a while ago, is what we see on the end user side. When we looked at what challenges they have, specifically the mid-size companies, they're completely overwhelmed with what data really to collect. And that triggered something with us where we would say, let's find an easy plug-and-play solution, what an end user can easily monitor the efficiency of his machine. So we changed the product line a little bit to be more flexible to integrate into the Internet of Things or networking the machines at a mid-size level, but leaving it open to expand into bigger things, where our system maybe is not good enough anymore, but we want to make it that you have an interface going into a bigger analytics system, for example. And we found that's what the market sometimes needs, specifically when companies, the small and mid-sized companies, want to get into this. They don't have dedicated people all the time. They have a couple smart guys in the team, but they want to get some data quick without doing a lot of work. And we found that a solution like that is really beneficial for them. And so we're implementing that and making it easier for them to do that. And they appreciate that. Yeah, I think that's a good
Thank you. Thank you, Gizbert. Okay, Lou, so you've heard many stories of what's happening out there. I know you're going to have a great take on this. So what are you seeing? Because you were all over the place, and you're seeing a lot of different aspects of this. What are you seeing out there?
Yeah, we are. We're actually what we typically see are companies that they don't get the IIoT narrative. What they try to do is, and this is every one of my panelists, brothers and sisters here, said the right thing regarding technology and making things better and providing better insights. but I would challenge it and say that what we typically do is when we talk to the C-levels in the companies, the issues that they're raising are a little bit different than technology, because there's so much great technology out there. Rockwell, Zebra, there's tremendous technology that's out in the marketplace today. And the conversation with the CEO, for example, is how do I stay relevant? How do I bring more value to my customers? So they're thinking at a different level, and that level that's important to them is what allows them to continue on bringing new and innovative, maybe disruptive new products and services to their customers, making it more important for their customers to stay with them. Competition's getting pretty fierce, right? And their customers can go to other places. So that's what we typically find.
Let me ask you, Lou, then a follow-up on that real quick. So you just hit on the holy grail that I tend to believe with you, which is culture. How much does culture dictate success of an IIoT technology implementation? And I'm going to ask you, but then others that want to weigh in, just let me know. You know, as Lou's talking, you know, you jump in or whatever. I don't want to be a moderator that just goes around and asks questions. Let's make it a dialogue. And as Lou's talking about culture, feel free to cut him right off and get your point. No, you know my point. Let's try and be sane and civil, but let's have a good dialogue. So Lou, why don't you start talking about that? Because I know you really impressed me when we were in our training wheel session for this moderation panel before we did it. Talk to me about culture.
Culture is interesting, and everybody uses culture as a way of solving problems. And when these situations that I've just spoke about resonate at the CEO level, of course, the CEO and all the C-level and all the executives in a company are concerned about culture disruption. But what they're more concerned about is the longevity of my business and how culture evolves moving forward. But you know, I have the luxury of speaking to many CEOs, and culture, believe it or not, culture isn't the necessary word that comes up, but the most important word is how do I make my people more effective? Kind of like what Michael was saying before, and what Diane was saying before. How do I get my people to move forward, which will evolve the culture in the new digital age? That's the exciting part about it. And like I said, you know, there's great technology. There's no question about the technology. When we talk, I'm more interested in talking to a CEO about what is it supposed to look like and how do I get you there from an outcome standpoint. And then all this technology and all these insights and all these analytical insights that we gain from the technology can secure them to achieve their outcome and grow as their company and stay relevant or
so Lou, let me take that and go to Diane and say, so how did you do it? How did you bring your people along? Because you know, Automation Alley, we don't fight the battle of understanding technology. We fight the battle of people going, that's going to take my job. And I don't want that thing, that technology, whatever in here, because I don't want the plant to be hyper efficient because then they won't need me. How are you dealing with, I know it's a false narrative, but we all know it on this call, but how are you dealing with that?
You know, that's really interesting because that's really the narrative that comes to mind of the CEO, you know, when we're talking about technology and culture. And I think before we went through this dialogue, you know, you said challenges, and that immediately came to mind as well. So culture has been a challenge for us, and as we've changed and adapted to technology, something that you see is IT just being more just integrated into all aspects of the company, and you know, operators also having a role in that, and having to be comfortable with the technology, and you know, IT staff having to be continually trained. But the culture shift that we had was really going from managers kind of taking care of all of the functions, taking care of purchasing, taking care of inventory, taking care of production, quoting, and we implemented ERP, and then we decided that those processes needed to be centralized to become more efficient. So then it was a matter of managers feeling that, you know, their roles were being diminished, or, you know, and so you had to really sell them on the idea that this was going to make life a lot easier. And Even now with things like robotics, you hear about robots, but then you also hear about cobots. And so as opposed to being replaced, I feel like the narrative is kind of shifting to how we can use technology to assist us better, and also how we can work together with the technologies for maximum results.
Terrific. Michael, do you agree with that? That was a great answer from Diane.
I do. And just building off that, it's more about augmentation, augmentation of people capabilities, and really putting them where they can add the most value. So really stripping out things like repetitive tasks through automation and robotics, but then also at the same time going through the change management of reskilling them or upskilling them or new skilling, whatever the context. But it really it's that shift. It's not a displacement mindset, because I think there's, it's very hard to find people that understand your operations, and when they do, you want to really rather deploy them where they can add more value. So it's not about displacement. It's really about a shift and an adaptive culture. I think if I get back to some of what Lou was saying, it's about how adaptive is your culture, and we kind of, when we look for kind of field or application engineers, we're really looking for people that have a certain kind of grit. And really what we're saying is a set of softer skills that allows them to collaborate and be more consultative in this context of faster paced change and need to adapt. And that's this whole mindset of, 4-year degree once and done. That's just not the case. There's this continuous process of staying current with technology and how it's applied.
So Gizbert, I'd like to come to you on this, because in the machine tool business, boy, there's a lot of change going on right now.
Mhm.
Talk to me a little bit about what's happening around IIoT and the machine tool space.
There's more. I want to go back a little bit on the culture thing, and I agree with what everybody said so far. What our experience is really you have to cultivate that mindset. And what we found is that customers who allowed their people on the floor to provide input and not just applying it like the big brother is watching from the top and we monitoring what you do all the time, you got to give these people also the opportunity to give you feedback. Why couldn't they do something? And that's going to help you as a CEO to identify bottlenecks in your production or in your environment, getting things done, improved quickly, because the peers down there helping each other to make things better, utilizing this technology. Coming back to your question about the machine tool side, certainly we see more sensor technology. We're using more learning technology, so the machine tool is able now to learn how a machine behaves in a certain cutting condition, specifically if your machine like additive parts, where you not always know exactly where the materials are. So all these type of technology goes into a learning process, into the machine tool, CNC technology now, to make the process more efficient, and also help the people who operate machine tools that they don't have to be, they have to run 2, 3, 4, 5 machines sometimes because we don't have enough labor, right? And so that helped quite a bit to get good parts out quickly. And I think there's a trend, what we see more and more.
Yeah, thank you. So Mark, I'm going to come to you, but Gizbert, and you guys be thinking about this. I mean, one of the problems we face in Detroit, and this is happening in every city, and that's tied to manufacturing, is you can't find CNC operators anymore. And if they're there for about a week, and then they get a higher paid job 2 weeks down the road. And so it's this constant turnover, and might have a wage problem issue, but that's a whole other discussion. But Mark, let me come to you. And I see the questions coming in from Francisco and Yella and Ralph, and we're going to try and get to those as well. But Mark, talk to me a little bit about edge computing, and why is that so critical today to be thinking about if I'm small or I'm large? What does it mean? And why do I need to put that in my vocabulary going forward?
Yeah, well, I mean, we've touched already on, the pace of the technological change is not going to slow down. It's not going to stop. In terms of culture, certainly, we want to be able to solve old problems in new ways, and there's certainly the opportunity to do that. And probably one of the clearest cultural divides, as we've already referenced here, is OT/IT. And I've seen some customers successfully bridge that by kind of taking an innovation team, an agile team, and pulling them out of the traditional reporting structure and budget and say, you guys go innovate and pilot and do that kind of thing. And that, that can help. It's, like I said, the pace of technology coming in is not going to stop. And I do think as we go forward and we move beyond, operational visibility, leveraging the cloud, the idea of edge computing, we're on the verge of new wireless technology, both wide area and local area, that's going to have much higher bandwidth, much lower latency. It's going to enable more and more function to be put in the cloud successfully. That is also going to challenge maybe our preconceptions about IT/OT architecture, about cybersecurity, pretty topical item here. But it's going to continue, and to get the real value out of that, as we see in other operating environments, because this revolution has its own character in the manufacturing plant, but the same thing is going on in retail and healthcare and even warehouse.
So
that we have to take data from multiple sources and make sense of it in real time, and that's what AI is going to be able to do, right? And we have to be open to that.
So I'm going to push back a little bit as a customer and say, and maybe Diane can corroborate with me or not, but, and I'm going to say, so IIoT, especially if I'm small or medium size, so I put sensors on everything, I'm generating all this data. So what? Did it really change? Did I get more production out the door in any given day? Everybody's selling me technology, and it didn't move my needle all that much. In fact, it's really hard for me to look at the ROI and say that I actually got a return on that investment, because my hair's on fire every day trying to get people to work the machines, blah, 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 right? So we all know those stories. In fact, it's tied in a little bit to Francisco's question. Just give me the technology to pay attention to. And we'll get to that question second. But the first question is this question that I just asked around, why should I even invest in IIoT? I'm not sure I totally get the ROI here.
And Tom, if I could jump in on that also, I guess, as a customer, why are such a high percentage of implementations? Why do they fail? Why aren't they more successful? What are some reasons for failure?
And I want to ask you, so what made you successful, do you think? I mean, you're our poster girl for this worked. So tell me first why you think, you can't take luck as an answer. So beyond luck, why do you think this worked for you?
We don't do failure.
Yeah.
No, I mean, for us, and to answer your question as well, and I'm going to throw my question to the tech gurus in the room, but for us, data is not the end game. Data can't be the end game, and also we struggled. One of the challenges that we had was bad data. So the sensors helped us to get a more accurate reading of data, took out a lot of the human errors. But I think that it just needs to be part of a larger strategic vision. Data for the sake of data is really a waste. And also with the large investments that we've made in the technology, it's not cheap. And so you really have to know, what you're going to be getting out of it, and especially without the immediate ROI, oftentimes it just needs to fit into a larger strategic vision.
So I open it up. Who wants to take this question of so what? So what? So everybody's talking IIoT, 80% fail, right? That we threw that number around on our trial call.
So I can say a couple of things to that. I think, like I said before, I think you have to really define what is your objective. First of all, forget all this implementation of all the IoT. Look at what you want to achieve. Where do you want to have ROI, or what do you want? You want more production, you want better quality, and then define these goals very clearly, and then look at what data you can collect for that specific goal. And you got to be very objective about this, because when we talk to customers these days and you ask them about machine efficiency, they think, oh, we're running at 70, 80% efficiency. We put the monitoring system on there, and it turns out it's at 30, maybe 40. So that it's a big eye opener, because everybody has this gut feeling, oh, my guys are always running the machines, the spindles are turning. That doesn't make you making parts, or parts you can sell or ship. So you got to really look at where your objectives, and I think that's the biggest thing. Otherwise, you get overwhelmed and you're gonna fail, like Diana pointed out. I think that's it's critical.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Just,
Mike. Go ahead.
oh, thank you. I'll step back. But just to add to that, I mean, I think one thing you can never discount is domain expertise. So you're really matching up your objectives, your strategy, like Dan's referring to. Got to bring all these things to bear. You've got to look at the end use cases you need to integrate into manufacturing operations long before you even design the information that you're actually going to need. So it has to be done with intentionality and systems thinking. So a lot of careful engineering has to go into the design process itself. So that's a key part that's often overlooked, as opposed to just implementing these technologies. And that's the only way you're going to get value out of it. And yeah, you do have to take some risk to do that. You do have to benchmark to do that, but I think it comes down to the engineering design process. And with these new technologies we have, where we can actually apply metaphysics models, and we can actually do everything in a simulated environment with extremely high fidelity, you're able to test some things and validate what data you need before you even physically start to do the engineering. So, with Industry 4.0 technologies, I think that we're well positioned to actually even make the business case before we even produce a single physical product. And I think it's shifting, but it does come back to domain expertise. It's deep domain expertise is really required with multidisciplinary teams to actually design a greenfield facility, never mind a brownfield upgrade.
Yeah. So Lou, you had you want to make a comment for sure.
Yeah, my thinking is, or I would challenge us to say, regardless of what the technology is, if the CEO says, I want to grow 20% per year compound annually for the next 5 years, that's the plan. That's the strategy. The strategy is up there in the office that says, okay, that's the goal, or that's the outcome, right, that I keep talking about. How do I do it? How do I do it? By reducing financial risks, reducing digital transformation risks, people culture risk. All of those things start up on top. I really believe that the conversation is around the journey to growth, the journey to relevance. That's the most important piece, because like I said before, tremendous technology. We could do a lot of the stuff that's out there today, different flavors, right? But we could do a lot of those things in terms that generate data. But I agree with Diane, data doesn't mean anything unless it's used to achieve a strategic goal that the board or the CEO or some executive group says, this is what I want to be in the next 5 years or 3 years, whatever that may be. So that's just my approach to it. It's just kind of a different tilt to what we're all saying here on the panel. So
yeah, Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, I've seen a number of, say medium-sized discrete manufacturers move ahead with real-time locationing or RFID or something like that. And it's really mostly around materials management, but not necessarily, other assets can be tracked in real time. And it's somewhat about preventing an error from actually impacting the line, getting enough visibility to say, I can prevent this. I don't find out the hard way that I have a problem. So a couple of thoughts there. Number one, there are a growing number of technologies like BLE, all kinds of technologies that can give you location information in particular at lower and lower costs, less capital, what have you. And it's kind of a balancing act, because yes, you want the investment to be tied to ROI, clearly. If you didn't realize the ROI, what was the point of all that? However, in my experience, these execution type systems are sticky. And once they're in, they're kind of expensive to change. And it really is a strategic decision in that sense. You're establishing a capability that you may have or not have, depending on how you do that. And so you have to also think long-term. And in location solutions in particular, this comes up a lot, is saying, well, right now I want to solve this one high value problem that traditional methods aren't getting done. But maybe I should think about this as a utility that I can use plant wide, and there's 30 other use cases I could come up with, you know, so it's that kind of, it is quite situational.
So Mark and the team, I want you all to think about this. So there's IT, which is the front of the house, and a lot of times would kind of choose or dominate the MES system and all the other systems that are running in IT. Then you have the back of the house OT, the operations technology. They think very differently about problems. Manufacturing engineers and IT people. Who's going to win that battle? Is it a battle, or is that a made-up thing? And I see great risk in the divergence of those. Whether you're a little company or a big company, you have front of the house, back of the house. Maybe your front of the house is managed by Microsoft through Office 365, but you still have these separate systems. What does that mean for our listener, for our viewers? This separation of IT and OT. Who wants to take that?
Take it. I'm brave enough to step up. So I'll come back to Lou raised a good point here, and I wanted to add it to it. A lot of that comes down to what I would call digital savvy leadership. Do the C-level in the company that are managing this really understand the technology and what the implications of implementing it are? Because when they do, then they're going to shift.
Do they? I'm going to challenge you. Do they? What percent of CEOs actually understand the technology in their businesses today?
I would think it's fairly low. I'd have to if you give me a couple of minutes, I'll try and I'll come back with a number. But
it's fairly low.
In surveys that are done, 75% of IoT projects generally fail. So you've got to believe it's generally pretty low. But when you have a digital savvy leader or leadership team that understand the implications of what they're trying to do, then I think they take a different perspective on how to organize their people. And by that, I mean, when we're implementing an MES system from the get-go, we want to make sure that the IT folks are engaged, they understand the architectures around it, what the implications of those choices are, and it's not just the lowest cost. And so even in our own company and a lot of our customers, we're seeing a rearrangement of the IT function to be less kind of back office facing and more enabling and more engaging with those manufacturing side of the house. So that shift, I think, is going to continue and perhaps accelerate. But I think it does tie back to the top and their perspective on how to organize their people to get the best out of it and at the same time mitigate the risk of implementation. Mm-hmm. I think that to me is the key.
Yeah, and not just organizing, but transforming and living by their outcomes and determining how relevant I want to be and determining how do I make it easier for my customers to buy from me. That's what I think is, to just add to what you were saying, Michael, is probably the most important thing, because one of the reasons why these types of solutions or these types of projects fail is exactly what you just said. They don't know. But the reason they don't know is because they don't know what they want it to be. They don't know the impact of what it could be if done right. And that, just some thinking. So,
I mean, maybe I can simplify a little bit, Tom. I would just look at it very pragmatic, and I would say, who is the internal customer here? And the internal customer should really drive who is delivering product or help to the internal customer. If the IT department is needed to make the operation work and be more efficient, then they have to feed and support that group. And it's not the other way around. The IT department tells operations, oh, we can't do that, you can't do this, you can't link to this, you can't get into the cloud, you can't do whatever, you can't get this data, whatever it is. So I think you really need to simplify it all the way down to who is the customer here. And you need to serve that customer internally, and then you solve a lot of problems, I think, right from the top down.
Great comments. Diane, I wanted to ask you, so based on all this conversation we've just been having, so you implemented, and let's say we got 6 months down the road, what surprised you most about what your employees were thinking and feeling after implementation, sort of after you got over the begrudging acceptance? What what surprised you most about your IIoT implementation?
I think the begrudging acceptance is, and the culture, it's not a one-time cultural shift. It's ongoing cultural maintenance. So again, those kind of IT/OT conversions as well. I think we're seeing gaps close a little bit generationally as well. The technology is becoming more immersive. It's becoming more intuitive. I think but the collaboration between people is still collaboration between people. It's a management of people issue, and so it was difficult prior to the technology, and it's difficult with the technology. And I think some of those issues really kind of remain constant. You expect there maybe to be a leveler with the technology, or that the technology is going to fix certain issues, but it really doesn't. It just changes in different ways. And so I think to view technology not as a quick fix for any issue, it really is a tool. And I think that was kind of an interesting realization, like as we kind of developed our IT.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask one question from the audience. It came from Yela Trask. I hope I said your name correctly. They asked, on a guesstimate, what % of small and medium-sized manufacturers are taking action to implement IIoT? What % of small? What do you guys think? Anybody have a general idea? Maybe Michael or Gizbert would have good analysis into that. Anybody?
I was going to go scratch for some numbers, but I would say less than 30%. I'll see if I can get you some numbers just out of interest.
Yeah, I think you're about right there, Mike. I think that's about right. But I think the trend is going up very, very quickly now. People are really looking for solutions and jumping in this specifically now. They have time, right? They're working from home. They're trying to use the IT system to improve their productivity and access and view machines and operations, and so it helped actually a little bit to grow this trend, I think.
So let me ask a follow-up question to all of you, and look for someone to raise their hand and jump in. So let me give you a scenario of a consumer. I order Ring alarm, and I can install it myself. I can put cameras all around my property. I can put sensors on everything. I can measure for water. I can bring my thermostat in. And it all goes to my phone, and I've installed it myself, and it all just works. How close are we to that experience in an industrial environment where it just works? You get your sensor, you throw it on the machine, it measures vibration, or you ring it on an electrical wire, and it measures amps, or it measures heat, and it's just that easy. And they just put it in, and it just goes to the cloud. And maybe you guys would have an answer on that. Maybe I'm crazy, but wouldn't you think that's our customers should be asking that, right? Like, when can I make this drop dead simple where it's easy to fail, even if I don't get the kind of results I wanted? Who wants to take that? Is that too loaded a question? Diane wants to go first. Let's let Diane go, because she's the customer here, right? Let's hear what you have to say, and then we'll go around the horn. Okay, how's that?
Yeah, I want to hear this.
Well, at least on the the equipment side, when we think about making purchases on equipment, it's capability, it's quality, but really a big part of that decision is maintenance and service, and the speed of maintenance and service, and the reduction of downtime. And so if all of that is also included with the equipment or the machine, that they have cloud software solutions, are able to provide fast technical service and support, that really impacts our decision to purchase.
Excellent. Who wants to go second? Michael, you want to try?
So with Industry 4.0, like I mentioned, interoperability standards are still evolving. So with some technologies, you can say it's fairly kind of off the shelf, plug and play, but to a large extent it isn't, just because the complexity of installing new technology over old existing technology in most cases as well. So you're always going to have this kind of migration challenge. But I think that that point is probably we're probably a couple of years out before we kind of get to that kind of ease of implementation in an industrial setting.
I think you're an optimist, Michael, but I love it. Anybody else have a comment on this? Otherwise, I'll ask you.
Yeah, I think, you know, it always depends on the brand, right? If you have a brand and you stick with a brand, like Diane also says, you look at one brand and the plug and play works fairly easy. But if you have now multiple brands in your shop or in your environment, it's not going to be so easy. So as you probably know also, Tom, there is MT Connect, like a protocol, right? What is pretty much standard now in the US. It's free. It's a free protocol, and you can interact with all kinds of machines now. So you don't have to always go to the machine tool builder. So these type of protocol systems and changes, as more they become established and more available, I think it's going to help a lot to do this much more efficient, even if you have different brands in the shop.
Yeah, Mark, you unmuted. What you got?
Yeah, just comment. You know, in terms of tracking assets, materials, and people, and coordinating all that, with an unlimited budget, we can make it real easy. But that's usually not the case, right? So if you really want to accomplish the ROI, a particular business objective in the most optimum way, it's going to require some fairly deep analysis.
Lou, what do you think?
If I heard your question right, the first thing I would ask is why. You know, it's interesting to hear Diane as a user, a customer, a company, but it still gets back to why are we doing this in the first place?
Mm-hmm.
I think most of the reasons why that people do things in the first place is because there's a problem and we got to throw technology at it, as opposed to there's a problem and let's figure out what the root cause of that problem is and then solve it with technology, but solve it so that the outcome of that solution brings guaranteed outcomes, as opposed to, and I agree with a lot of everything that's being said, but sometimes we just tend to throw technology at things to try to fix things. And when you throw technology to fix things, most of the time the technology is great, but it doesn't serve the purpose. And then all of a sudden the industry says, oh, 80% of the projects fail. And that's my only thought there. So that's the reason why I say just why in the first place.
And beyond, is it always culture the reason they fail? Is it bad tech fit? Is it, why do they fail? And this can be quick if it's just culture, because we talked about that at length, but why do 80% fail? That seems shocking to me.
Well, you want my take on it?
I've heard that term for years, right?
So Industry 4.0 has 9 particular pillars, and I've yet to see an engineering team that understands all 9. So and that's before you kind of get the management oversight and culture and objectives overlaying that. So you know, I do think we'll see more interoperability, but that it's a little bit of both. It's literally a bit of both.
So it's just you're telling me it's just complexity. This convergence of everything. It's not just a sensor problem or a 3D printing problem or a machine tool problem. It's all of this converging, and now they're paying attention to everything, and it's just too hard to figure out. Is that what I'm hearing?
It's very difficult to figure out, and it's very difficult to get good at figuring it out and to do it repeatedly and to learn from it. I think one of the most complex projects we just executed recently that has all 9 pillars, full end-to-end system. We probably had about 150 subject matter experts contribute to that. And then we managed the design. So that's just one example, you know, but if you're doing pieces of it, then it can be different.
So we have bloodied our audience into submission around the fact that it's very difficult. It's culture not going to work. CEOs aren't getting it. 80% fail. They're asking for a medic. Okay, you're all medics. What's the one thing they need to do from this point forward that can help them succeed? And let's start with, we'll start with Mark.
I was really hoping you weren't going to pick me first.
I thought I'd set you up perfectly.
I'm taking notes, Mark.
Do you want to go last? I can come back.
No. I mean, there's not one thing, you know, we've touched on, I think all the things, here today. Culture is critical. IIoT, managing that. As I said, we have I manage an advisory council of some of our manufacturing practitioners, and every year I ask them the same thing: is IIoT still a big cultural divide? And I get an absolute affirmative yes to that question each year. And as we know, the technology is smashing those two worlds together, and we've touched on some of the issues that are driving that. But I think leadership, I would say, right? Senior leadership. I'm sure Diane can emphasize that, because you're necessarily, to do this right, going to be crossing cultural, organizational, budget lines that are kind of ingrained in a lot of enterprises, sometimes heavily ingrained. For the multi-plan or multinational, it's about balancing. How do I establish corporate standards and allow local innovation at the same time? It's a balancing act there, but I would say leadership.
Great. Who wants to go second? Give me a hand up.
Yeah, I'll dive in. I'll agree with Mark. It really does come back to digital savvy leadership and knowledge of your organizational capabilities and also your weaknesses as well. Because implementing the technology in and of itself is not the difficult part. We can integrate all these technologies. It's really tying them back strongly to your objectives and being able to predict that you're going to get the outcomes that you signed up for when you invested. So these projects aren't per se hard. They can be done, but there has to be the right leadership that can see it through and get the right result. So I would really agree with Mark and a little bit about what Diane said earlier.
I'm going to give Diane the last word and go to Gizbert and then Lou, and then we'll go to Diane. So Gizbert.
I agree with leadership, and like I said before, I think it's very critical to set the right goals, the objectives, what you really want to achieve. But for me, it's also very critical that you engage the team as early as possible in the process. You don't want to go too far into your roadmap and what you're going to do without consulting with the team, what is involved in implementing it. And the earlier you can get their input, you maybe learn something what you didn't know before, and it will help also to cultivate right from the beginning the new culture, the new thinking process of how to implement certain things, and the buy-in is going to be much better that way too.
Excellent. Okay, Lou, what do you have to say?
The theme is leadership, right? I agree, and I'm glad that I also heard Michael say outcomes. The C-level people in companies today have a tough job, and it gets back to, in my opinion, it gets back to how do I continue growing on the journey of the company? If you're publicly held, you've got some really interesting scenarios in front of you. If you're privately held, you're family driven, whatever it may be, you have longevity. You want to grow the next 50 years. These are really critical times for leadership to make sound business decisions and determine where they want to be as a company. And then build the plans and all the technologies that are available to go deploy that. That's my thought. I mean, I agree with everybody that said what you guys just said on the panel here. I
think perhaps fitting, Lou, is that the last word goes to our customer in the room, yep. Dr. Diane Tammy. So give us your thoughts. We are all ears.
Oh boy. I agree with everybody, and I really think that the buy-in is so critically important in being a leader, being a digitally savvy leader. Top-down implementation is not going to work. We did that with our first run at ERP, and it wasn't good. It wasn't pretty at all. And so you really need that buy-in, and people need to understand, and this is more probably operations, they need to understand the benefits, they need to understand the vision. And then also it's important for leadership to develop that strategy, that vision, and how what this technology is going to measure and how that's going to help your business grow. And I'd have to say also, in addition to like Lou was saying, oftentimes we try to throw technology at a problem to make it go away. But I think the reverse is true also. And from our experience, we've also found that the use of technology has actually helped us to see problems, and it exposes problems and allows us to be a better company. So if there's a silver lining here too, I just think that the technology and the journey has really helped us become a better company.
Thank you, Diane. So Diane, Mark, Lou, Michael, Gizbert, thank you for your time. I'm going to turn it back over to Franziska and say thank the audience for being such good question makers here. And hopefully we all learned something today. I know I did. Back to you, Franziska.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Tom, for moderating and guiding us through. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And I hope you have all a wonderful day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Nice job, Tom.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Tom. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.